In this video, we are going to learn about group by statement that are often used with aggregation functions that you learned about like count, max, min, sum, average, etc. So what is group by statement? Well, essentially this statement is used to group rows within your data that have the same or identical values. That is, if a particular column has same values in different rows, then it will arrange these rows in a group. So let's take an example so that things would be more clear. Suppose you are in charge of handling the database containing information of employees working for a company in North America. You have already seen employee details information in the last lesson. So this table which you are seeing on screen is a bit different. This one refers to simple location data. In particular, this is the regions data table, storing the basic geographic data for regions in continent North America where employees work in. Here you can see some rows and columns of the data table like region ID, region and country. These are the three columns that we are having in this table. The first column that we have, region ID, it tells you the unique ID for a particular region. Then the next column, region column, which contains the name of the region. And lastly, we have the country column referring to the name of the country. So what is the task over here? Our task is to find out how many regions are present for each country. I encourage you to think about this. So pause your video and think about the right output to this problem, how you would be getting the output, what you want to give as the input, how your query would be. Think about this and come up with the best approach to solve this using the SQL query and then visualize the output table. You can even try drawing on paper what the output should look like. So, according to the problem, we need the number of regions for each country. So it makes sense that the output contains only two columns. What are those two columns? The first column should be country, which refers to the name of each distinct country in our original country column. In our case, it has United States, Mexico, and Canada. The second column could be named something like number of regions, as our problem states that we need to get the count or how many regions are there in each country, meaning it should have the count. That's why I'm giving the column name over here as number of regions. Great. Now let's add an individual counts in the number of region columns. So for US, we are counting the number of rows where the country is United States. Here we have 3 rows which mention country as United States and 3 different regions are there for that. So when we do grouping, that is grouping of the rows we are doing together based on the country, we get count of regions or the number of regions as 3. Similarly, we are counting the number of rows for the country Mexico and we get the output as 2. Same goes for Canada. And we get over here also output as 2. So why do you need SQL to solve this question? Because we just now solved this output here on the screen together. No brainer, right? Just counting it and getting the things. Well, sure. Since we had small tables and countable number of rows, we were able to easily group the country column and get the output. But when the data size increases to many hundreds, thousands of rows that you have in the data, we will not be able to do this manually, as you won't be able to visually see the complete data together. How will you group it together manually? That won't be possible. And that's where you need to use SQL, and in SQL we need to use group by clause. First, since we are referring to the country column, we need to write this with the select statement. Hence, we start with the code select country. That is our first column. Are we referring to any other column? Well, looks like we need to refer to region column too, since we need to get the number of regions, right? But we don't need regions directly. As of now, we just have regions column in the original table. We don't want it directly. We want number of regions. So rather than getting the region column, we want the output to display the count of regions based on each and every country. So over here, what the query would be, we would modify it as select country, comma, count region. Now what is count? Count is an aggregate function that we have. Let's assign a name to this returned count as we did in our expected output. So we assign this in our code with as number of regions. So what we are doing, select country, count region, and naming this count region as number of regions. This column contains the count of region for all the 3 countries. Of course, we need to mention the table name from which we want to retrieve the data. In our example, the input table is known as regions table. So we will add it with the from clause, and that's what you can see on screen. Select country, count region as number of regions from regions. That is the table name. Last but not the least, since we are grouping our data based on country, we need to count the regions based on country. We need to specify same in the SQL query. So how we have specified, we are grouping on country. That's why group by country. So our complete query is select country, comma, count region, naming that column as number of regions. So these are the 2 output columns. From which table we want? From regions table. We are grouping on which column? That is country column. Thus, we have added a clause group by country. Fantastic. Now that we have the SQL code, let's execute it on the Metabase and confirm the output there. So let's go to Metabase. Which table we are going to use? We are going to use regions table. So it is regions data that we are going to use over here. First and foremost thing, we should always look at the table without having any condition or any other clause. So simple, select star from regions. This is our table, right? So let's execute this and see what data we are having over here. Select this and execute. We have 3 columns, region ID, region and country. As we have already seen before also in theory part, that this is what the data looks like. Region ID is your primary indicator telling what is the ID for each and every region. Region gives you in terms of name that what is the name of that region, and country is of course each and every country what you have in your table. So these are the 3 columns that we have. We have 3 entries for United States, 2 for Mexico and 2 for Canada. In all, we have 7 rows over here. Awesome. So let's proceed further to our actual query. And what is our actual query? What we want to do? We want to find out number of regions. So as we have seen in the example, same thing we need to achieve over here. The total number of regions in each country. What we will do is select what are the columns that we need, country and number of regions. So first of all, country column. So select country, comma, which is the other column, number of regions. We don't have any such column as number of regions. That will come by an aggregate function, that is count. So we will use it as count region. And we should name this as we want to see the output as number of regions. Of course, we need to fetch these details from a table. So we have to specify from which table, that is regions table. Now comes the most important part. We need to group it based on country so that it merges or it groups all the countries, all the similar countries together and count the number of regions present. So for that, we will use the group by clause. Group by which column? That is country column. Great. So our query is done. Let's execute this. And we have 3 rows as the output with 2 columns. Country and number of regions. That's what we specified in select, right? Now, what is the output that we are seeing? 3 countries are there: United States, Mexico, and Canada. United States is with number of regions as 3. Mexico and Canada both have number of region as 2. Now, how we are getting these counts? This is coming from count of regions. That is one of the select that we have, number of regions. It is the aggregate function that we are using. And of course, it is grouping on each and every country. So great. We have seen the query and we know how to use group by. Let's proceed further with a little lengthy table. Another table which you guys are pretty much familiar with by now. What is the table that we have? That is the employees table. That is the employee detail table to get the employee information. You guys are pretty much familiar with that, but still, let's see that table first. Select star from employees detail. This is the table name that we have. Let's run this. Okay, so we see all these observations over here. How many rows we have? In this table, we are having 1000 rows, 1000 different employees are there. Each row represents the employee information. Here we have various columns such as employee ID, first name, last name, email of the employee, hire date, the employee department, their gender, salary per month, and finally we have the region ID in which he or she works. This is one of the important tables that we are going to use all throughout because this is a lengthy table and multiple functions could be performed over here. Now that we have seen the data set, let's say we want to find the sum of salaries for each department. How can we accomplish this using group by? So first of all, let's write what we are trying to accomplish. What we want is total salary, right? Total salary based on department. So we want, in short, what we are looking for, how much is the salary being paid in each and every department, correct? So first of all, what we require department column. So select department, comma. Next, what we want is, we want the total salary. That is nothing but your sum of salary that we require, right? Total salary, sum. So that is an aggregate function, sum salary. Now I want to name this column as something so that it comes in my output like that column name, which is as total salary. So as total underscore salary. This is the name that we are giving. Of course, we have to pick it up from a different table. It is not the same regions table, it is a different table, that is employees detail. So we will mention from which table we want employees detail. This is table. Now what we want total salary based on each and every department. That's where we have to do a group by. Group by which column? Department column, because I want department wise total salary, right? Let's execute this. And we have total of 27 rows returned. We can see that the columns are department and total salary. That's what we have mentioned in the select statement. There are lot of rows. There are huge number of salaries also for each and every department. If you see that sports is having 86,304 as a total salary. Tools is having 32,57,600 55 as the total salary. Like that, we have salary for each and every department listed over here. There are total of 27 rows or 27 different departments for which we have the total salary listed for each one of them, right? You can see as I'm scrolling through that we have different departments listed. So great. We have been able to achieve this as well as the total salary. Now let's modify the query a bit. Let's learn few more things. Now let's say we want to find the sum of salaries for each department only for region 1 and 2. So how we will accomplish that? Well, we have learned that when there is a condition, we need to use where clause. Let us modify the previous query with a condition. Condition is that I want to pick up this data only for region 1 and 2. So where region ID in either it could be 1 or 2, right? So it is in 1 comma 2, and I want to now do a group by on department. Done. So our query is done. Now let's execute this. And this is the output that we have. If you see now, the output has reduced to 26 rows. Okay. Columns remain the same, department and total salary. The first column that we are having, or the first value that we are having is first aid in the department. And for that, the total salary is 18,82,060 rupees. So this is the total salary that we are having. Similarly, you can see for games that is 7,13,868. You can see further also that for each and every department, we are having the salary. And now this salary is coming only and only for region ID 1 and 2. Region ID, other region IDs apart from 1 and 2 haven't been considered over here. Okay. So great work. Let's proceed further. Let's modify this a bit more. What we want is, now let's say we want to find the number of employees working in each department. How can we accomplish this? Instead of total salary, I want total, let me write it as total number of employees in each department. So there is a very slight modification that we require in this. Select same thing. I want department details, of course. And what I want now, I don't want the salary. So I'm not using some salary. What I want, number of employees. How will number come? That will come from count. Count of which column? Of course, employee ID. Because that is unique. What we want to name this column as total employees. From which table I want this? From employees detail table, and group by on the same column, that is department, because I want these details department wise, right? So select department, comma, count employee ID as total employees from employees detail and group by on department. Let's execute this. Great. So we got 27 rows returned because there are 27 different departments, and for each department we are having total number of employees. In vitamins department we have 37 employees, in books department we have 37 employees, in music we have 29. If you scroll further, you can see all the details. Okay, if you can see, sports has 34, tools has 39. So we have all the different departments listed, different 27 departments, and for each one of them we are having the details over here. So awesome. We have been able to learn group by. We saw multiple queries over here, how to write it with where, how to change it with different aggregation functions. So that's what is about group by. Now that we have gone over several code snippets, let's generalize the syntax of group by. As usual, we have the select statement, then the aggregator column name, which is the name of the existing column in the table, which you want to use for your aggregation or grouping. In our case, we use department. Then we mention the aggregation function, which we want to use like sum, count, max, min, etc. We have seen sum and count over here in our code snippets. And then we mention the keyword as with the alias name that we want to give to the aggregated column, as we have seen in the previous lesson of the aggregated functions as well. Then we mention the table name from which we want to retrieve the data. And finally, we write the keyword group by with the column which we want to group together, using which we want to group the data together, right? We write group by after the table name or after the where clause if it is present. Remember the code snippet that we have where region ID in 1, 2. So we have written after that group by. So group by always comes directly after from, or it comes, if you have a where clause, it comes after where clause. Here are some important points to note for group by statements. Always include all the aggregator columns that are used in group by, else you will get an error. Don't use a column that's not used in group by statement as a part of aggregator column names, else you will get an error. So, awesome. This concludes the lesson on group by. In next lesson, we will learn how to filter the aggregated columns using having.